Hello, and welcome to the first episode of America's Hot Gossip. My name is Will.
And I'm Caitlin.
We are young people in our 20s living in the state of Washington. On our show, we plan to dissect the latest headlines, explore underlying political issues, and spark conversations that matter. Join us for episode 1, where we are going to dive into how politicians play on people's emotions and prejudices, distracting them from the issues that matter. Stick around until the end for your daily dose of good news. We hope you enjoy.
We think are, well informed for the most part. Try not to speak on things I know nothing about.
Well, I think
we got good opinions. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that we just want to open up the discussion to make everyone more informed, whether that's us or somebody else.
Much nicer way to put it.
Yeah, well, just to open it up in a way that, is not so scary. Politics, I think, is a scary topic for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people, I feel like most people, are either ambivalent or they literally stay away from it like it's the plague. Like people just have, and I get it because shit's depressing and scary and stuff. If you really follow the news, it can get to you.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people do think that ignorance is bliss, and I can't blame them. But at the same time, you can only pretend things aren't happening for so long before things just getting too bad. It's just important to, at a baseline level, kind of understand what's going on in our society and how we can better shape society and what we can kind of do to help that.
And I consume a lot of media, try to do it from different sources, but it could be really frustrating because it feels like most of the time the popular media, I don't mean to be the person that's mainstream media, but most of the time the popular outlets are talking about bullshit half the time. It's more like celebrity gossip than anything. And it's frustrating when, I feel like so many people have so many real problems that are just never really talked about. I don't know, how expensive it is to live, which you'd think would be a big topic because everyone affects almost everyone, I guess. But.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel I don't know, coming from a younger perspective, currently, to me, it feels like a lot of people aren't even aware, people that are homeowners that aren't a part of the current market, or someone that is actively renting may not be aware completely of how stressful housing can be on people currently, and what that is looking like in today.
It literally stunts your brain growth. Anyways, I'm sorry about that. That's a whole can of worms. I just thinking of an example of I'm glad we can kind of talk about stuff that I feel is relevant to the average folk as much as you can be an average person,
Yeah, and I think a common frustration between us both is what is shown on media, in the media, and on the news versus these really important things that are happening that people aren't so aware of.
Yeah, and it can be kind of exasperating where you're especially things that feel like a crisis, again, I'm sorry to open up a can of worms, but polar ice caps are fucking melting, and it feels scary to live in America, especially if I was going to school still. Thank God I'm not in school, but it feels terrifying, if you had a kid, which we don't, to send a kid to school in today's day and age. It's just crazy, and that feels like a crisis that is never really addressed in any meaningful way, as an example. And it's exasperating because you just feel like every day that goes by, it's just worse and worse.
Yeah, I think on top of that too, it's so easy to get sucked into the negative that sometimes it is nice to also just focus on those small wins that we are having, even if it does seem like the world's burning today.
You're right.
But there are
been
some.
A bummer so far.
What did we want our first episode to be about?
Oh, I don't know if we decided on that.
You did. You remember in the car?
I said, yeah, that was one idea I had. Yeah. I guess what I've been thinking about a lot, and it goes through my head a lot, just because I feel like it's a time-tested strategy, is for like the powerful, rich, whatever people to kind of stir up hate among the population, like, you know, you should hate this minority group or this whatever, and so so the population is constantly bickering at each other, and you know, there's way more of them, but they think their enemy is the person next door that's on food stamps, rather than the giant corporations that are, you know, picking their pocket every day. And I just wish more people would kind of realize that when it's easy to be. No one's immune to manipulation from the media, but it's really frustrating seeing people like their number one issue is like just getting furious at trans people or whatever, and you just want to be like, don't you have problems? I know you have problems in your life. Your job doesn't pay you enough. Why aren't you mad about that? Don't you see that, like, this asshole is just making you mad at your neighbor, your coworker, your family member, instead of like the shitty stuff he's passing through the legislature or whatever it is?
Yeah, I also think that it's so easy. I find it so, I don't understand how people can play on people's emotions like that constantly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know from a marketing standpoint, that's something that we were always taught in school, is the ethos behind what we're doing and playing into that those emotions. Mm-hmm. But to take that and to use that so that it's affecting people's everyday lives, you know, it's affecting people's safety at this point.
Yeah, no, truly.
And it's hard to come to that conclusion that that's what these people are doing, and that you have to look past it. And because taking all of that hateful energy, it's just thinking of all we could do if we were to redirect that into things that actually mattered would be amazing.
Right? Yeah. And I feel like if we could just get that message to everybody, we could have crazy changes to society in a day, because there'd be, you know, 300 million versus a few, you know, if we actually just looked out for the fellow man, anyways, but yeah, so I guess that was the topic I wanted to talk about. And just one thing that got me thinking of it, but I think it just happens so often, and I wish people would stop buying into it, because I think it's on the rise again, of the demonization of others, the kind of like divide and conquer strategy, to distract from government kind of screwing you over. The thing that made me think of it was in recent months, Canada and Florida, I believe, both passed laws, and it's being discussed in other states, I think like Texas and Montana or something like that, but it's at least passed in Florida and Canada, similar laws which seem pretty, honestly, overtly racist, which I guess isn't that new, but like it just seems so overt, and I hardly saw it covered at all in the media.
So just for some context and sources on this story I'm talking about, first I'll read from CNN. So it said, Canada in 2023 is closing its doors to foreign investors who want to purchase homes. A new Canadian law took effect January 1st that essentially bans foreign buyers from buying residential properties as investments for 2 years. The law was passed because of a spike in Canadian home prices since the start of the pandemic, and some politicians believe that foreign buyers were responsible by snapping up supply of homes as investments. And then from the New York Times article about it, it says, non-Canadians got a lot of blame for the housing crisis, as it was a big issue politically, said Brendan Ogmanson, chief economist of the British Columbia Real Estate Association. But the pandemic shut off nearly the entire segment of foreign buyers, and prices still hit an all-time high. That's evidence that foreign buyers are not significant drivers of the market, and this ban will not affect anything. So that's at least his opinion. That's the Canadian law. And then in regards to the Florida one, they took a similar tack to Canada recently. So I'll read from the AP article about them. It says the law applies to properties within 10 miles of military installations and other quote-unquote critical infrastructure, and also affects citizens of Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, Iran, Russia, and North Korea. But Chinese citizens and those selling property to them face the harshest penalties. The prohibition also applies to agricultural land. Just a little bit down in the article, it says the law will, quote, codify and expand housing discrimination against people of Asian descent in violation of the Constitution and the Fair Housing Act, the ACLU said. It will also cast an undue burden or suspicion on anyone seeking to buy properties whose name sounds even remotely Asian, Russian, Iranian, Cuban, Venezuelan, or Syrian.
I mean, it just says Chinese people cannot own this land, and that seems like it's pretty materially affects a group of people that, land is how you build wealth and in this country for the most part, and housing, obviously, and just the implication that, like, Chinese people living here are, like, double agents that are gonna flip on America one day when America and China go to war and like start, I don't know, what would they do, like poisoning crops or like bombing a dam? Like, has this ever even happened?
Yeah, that's even like in the most extreme of examples, like worst case scenario, it's even hard to even think of what that would look like, and to even imagine. But I think we were kind of talking about this earlier. What that brings to my mind is, back when, what was it called?
Chinese exclusion act.
Exactly, yeah. That occurred. It just feels like it's repeating history just little by little.
Yeah, right.
It just reminds me a lot of that, and targeting these groups purely based on their backgrounds or their nationalities or race or anything like that. I just don't understand how people can look at things like land, or this is just another barrier to housing for people of that nationality in the States. And I don't understand why, just because someone may or may not be from here, I don't care. They're a human being, and I think they should have the same rights as the rest of us.
Yeah. And I believe in Canada, they passed at like the very beginning of 2023, I believe, something similar. And one of the reasons they gave, at least in the article I was reading, was that like, they didn't want like Chinese investors to buy up land because that was like inflating housing prices. And that just really set me off, because I'm like, yes, again, like we've already mentioned that housing prices are a very real problem. Which, like, I'm glad to see the government's addressing it, but they're addressing it by like demonizing Chinese people, and like this doesn't even seem like it would significantly bring down housing in any way by like denying Chinese people. Like, such a weird tactic, and so clearly like just trying to demonize other people rather to hide from the fact that they're not going to help you.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think another just example of the way that politicians in general tend to demonize groups is currently with it being Pride Month, the LGBTQI plus community, and just all of this time that's being taken to try and demonize that group of people, when, again, even if we can't all agree, if we took all of that energy and put it somewhere else, it would be amazing what could happen. And so it hurts everyone in the end, truly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pride Month, this is a different topic, but like you were talking about Pride Month, this is I've seen people say this online, and I've kind of felt it, and this year is probably the first year I felt it, where I just kind of feel like Pride Month has been kind of awful, like anything regarding the topic of Pride Month, and anytime companies try and do it, first of all, it feels like a whole lot less companies are doing anything related to Pride, which is just kind of an odd feeling, an odd thing to notice. But the ones that do, some of them have been facing this like massive backlash from these bizarre extremists, but then they'll kind of cave in, which is really discouraging. And I don't know, I feel like like I said, I don't want to speak for the gay community, but I have seen some gay people on Twitter express the sentiment that like I kind of am really hating Pride Month because instead of celebrating me, it feels like everyone's debating me. Mm-hmm. I'm scrutinized. It just enrages half the country. It seems not really half the country, but like a significant portion of people. So that just made me think of that. But something as simple as gay people existing can be such an inflammatory thing in 2023.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, and it even goes beyond that because I think that it's becoming so normalized in a lot of groups. And not only are you bad, but we're better. Just because we're straight or white or, I think I mentioned to you the other day, just a comment I saw from our hometown was that somebody was upset that there were pride flags around town. They were asking when they were going to be able to see, straight white flags. And somebody said, that doesn't mean one thing better than the other. And they were just almost bragging about the fact that, yes, it does mean that to them, that they are better than anyone else and that they're not afraid to say it. And it's just scary that these people are getting bolder and bolder and feeling like they can speak on these things that really are not okay.
Right? Yeah, I mean, especially since Trump, honestly, since Trump started running, but then especially when he was president, and then it's gotten worse in like the past year or two, especially related to LGBT people. But yeah, it's become not only like socially accepted for a lot of people, but encouraged and incentivized to just be like the loudest, biggest asshole you can. And yeah, I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people. Again, different topic, I'm just jumping topics, but a wake-up call for people was, when Trump was running and there was that literal Nazi rally with lots of people in Charlottesville. Just the fact that they felt comfortable doing that with not even a face mask on. Usually they're too big of sissies to show their faces, but there were hundreds of them literally mask off. And there's just smaller versions of that you see oftentimes from people that we live around, of just being so comfortable and almost proud to be ignorant, proud to be a bigot, proud to hate someone just because I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, even just, I don't know if you remember this time last year when we were moving to where we currently live, which is closer to Idaho. That whole, I think it was like a UPS or U-Haul full of men that were literally on their way to a pride rally. They were caught all with
it was called Patriot Front was the group. Yeah, which was hilarious because they just got arrested immediately. I think there was like an informant. That was funny to see. But yeah, just the fact that that's still happening. And I maybe this is historically incorrect, but it feels like there was years there where that wasn't happening regularly, and now you see it it happens more than you'd expect, for sure.
But still, that's scary. 31 men coming out, like literally most of their faces are covered.
In khakis.
In khakis. Even their hats are khaki. Getting out in this riot gear, and you can see it. There's videos of it when it's scary. And it's just, these people are finding communities almost because they're not afraid to speak. And it's... I think that that's an important part of like why we even wanted to create this podcast, was because we wanted to start making those people feel uncomfortable again, and almost say like, we see you, we are not okay with it, and we're going to be a little bit of a pain in their side, and that it's not going to be as easy for them as it has seemed in recent times.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Make bigotry not cool again. I don't know.
Make bigotry not cool again.
It's definitely always been present, but I mean, am I wrong in saying that there was like some kind of years there in the 2000s, early 2010s, where it felt like bigotry was kind of stigmatized, and then it came back?
It did. I do think a big part of that has to do with the whole Trump movement.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think the GOP has really have been accelerating their they're just like fascistic tendencies. I mean, I think for a while there they were trying to go, middle of the road like Mitt Romney and John McCain or whatever, and that didn't really work out for him. And then what ended up energizing people was just the open bigotry, not even attempting to be civil, of Donald Trump, as compared to Mitt Romney. And that for a while there, it was really paying off for the GOP. And they had energized all these people that had previously literally not voted or just not been political. I mean, we know people like that. And that was really good for him. I think it ended up, at least so far, we'll definitely have to see in the coming years what happens. But I think it started to bite him in the ass when Trump ended up losing him a bunch of important elections. But it's been kind of incentivized, and the people you see covered most in the media and end up raising the most money from the Republican side are people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was just taking the Trump a note from his playbook of just like ramping up the bigotry and just unashamed ignorance to 10, and she's been very heavily rewarded for that, as opposed to, what's Mitt Romney doing these days? He's like an outcast of his own party. So it just shows you how far they've moved. And a lot of Republican voters, I don't want to stereotype, but a lot statistically are not college educated, lower income, living in poorer red states with worse resources, not as much access to the things that they need due to inept conservative government for a really long time in many cases. And they're just kind of mired in exploitation and fighting for their, I don't know, I guess I don't want to go off on that tangent.
But yeah, so the Republican Party, looking at again, our hometown, seeing these people thinking that banning books is the answer, and it's doing nothing but, again, shutting down this information that is available for them, but they're choosing not to read because it challenges their beliefs. Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea of why they were wanting certain books banned, was the ones specifically that we knew of. They didn't want it to, quote, indoctrinate their children. And it's like, when really you're the one indoctrinating your children by literally banning books from them to read. Let them challenge what they think, let them challenge so they feel more solid in their beliefs, whichever way they decide that to go. It's not going to become your kid's life or this obsession that I think that they think it would become. It's just going to make someone feel represented and seen.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, especially since COVID really accelerated that, the GOP and especially Fox News and people like that have really been playing up playing on these fears of schools and the government, but especially schools are indoctrinating your children to I don't know, treat gay people normally or whatever, or know that gay people exist, but all sorts of fear mongering around. Your kids are learning this awful, horrible, anti-white, communist, socialist, LGBT propaganda at school, and you might not even know who they are anymore. They might be gay tomorrow or whatever, and it's been really effective in some ways. And you should talk about that meeting in Wenatchee.
Yeah, so I mean, in our hometown, they had a school board meeting where there was a flyer going around community pages saying that these people were going to come and speak against certain books that represented the transgender community, and they're very just sweet books that would be expected in a high school library, but these parents who homeschool their children were showing up to the high school that you and I went to, and were demanding to see the school library, the list of books, because they wanted to be able to go through them for whatever reason, even though their kid isn't.
They were like literally breaking into elementary schools.
Right. They were like,
call
no.
people groomers.
Exactly. They were like, no, you need to come back and make an appointment, and they didn't want to do that, and so they were going to make a big scene at the school board meeting. So thankfully that flyer went around on the opposite side of things, and there were numerous people that signed up to speak on behalf of supporting those kinds of books in these spaces, and again supporting the belief that your viewpoint is supposed to be challenged during your education. That's the whole point, is that you're expanding your knowledge base. But there were so many people there that were supporting those authors and supporting those books and just supporting our community that nobody actually ended up speaking in against.
They were just outnumbered.
They were. It would have been. I was really proud of our community that day, and I was really happy to see that, and I don't think either of us had expected that, but I think
we were a little bit rooting to see a crazy. We were like, oh, come on, let's just see what one of them says. Like, probably not for the best, but like, I just curious, wanted to hear their thoughts. But yeah, no, it was all like an hour of just people being like, let kids read books. This is good for kids. This is not scary. Your kid, I guarantee, if he's getting fucked up, it's not from a book at the library. It's from a million other things. It's from you. It's from the internet. It's not a book.
Well, that just makes me even wonder if people know, if they don't even remember what going to public school is like. Like, you learn things at so much of an earlier age, whether it's in the curriculum or not. You can't shield your child from every viewpoint that is not your own, every opinion that is not your own. And if you, honestly, in my opinion, if you aren't confident enough in your beliefs that you can help your child understand why you think the things you do, then maybe your argument isn't as good as you think it is. Yeah, but I think the point we're trying to make there with that is just that the only way to combat all these bad things that are happening, all these people that are getting way too comfortable speaking up in homophobic, racist, sexist ways, is to fight back a little bit, is to be that voice that is pushing back. Again, just to I'm not saying that anyone needs to throw a fit about things or make a scene, but just make them feel a little bit uncomfortable and just stand up and say, no, I disagree, or I'm going to support this person, whether you think that they should be or not.
I think speaking up is good, not letting bigots feel comfortable being bigoted in public, but also I feel like sometimes they're just, you're not going to argue someone out of their prejudices, and I feel like an effective strategy could be kind of like what we've been talking about. Like, can you just recognize for a moment, like maybe you've been a horse led to water, maybe that's not a good thing to say, that you've been told to care about this issue that really doesn't affect you, when you're unemployed and on food stamps, but you're mad at people on, I don't know, that's a bad example, but I don't know.
No, I get, I get what you're saying. It's just, I think, again, comes around to that sentiment of your energy we could use in so much more productive ways. It's just hard to sit here and grapple with what you think our society could be and how much we could grow. I mean, think about how fast technology is developing, and to see you would hope to see similar growth in society, but it just is feeling like the opposite a lot these days.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
The internet has ruined a lot of people. It's negatively affected many people in many ways. Definitely myself in some ways. But I've said this before. I feel like people are always thinking it's like the kids who are getting messed up on social media, and that can definitely be true. But from what I've seen anecdotally, it is 9 out of 10 times the old people, especially the 60 plus crowd, that is just having their brain completely broken by their Facebook feed, and no media literacy, no critical thought to interpret that thing on Facebook is maybe not 100% true just because it's on Facebook. It's just ruined a lot of old people's.
Well, and to give them credit, I think, I mean, it's hard. I don't know how much we could expect, considering the fact that they didn't grow up with the internet. You know, they weren't really in the ways that we were formally educated on how to navigate the internet. They didn't have that. And so I think that it's just hard. They're just such an easy target when it comes to things through social media, through the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to defend old people again, but you know, back in their day, you know, if you had 3 TV channels or whatever, and you got your news from probably those 3 TV channels and or the newspaper, but that all had, you know, it was very gate kept as to whose voices you heard, and you tended to hear, not that they wouldn't lie or propagandize, but at least it was verified, you know, institutions, journalists, people whose job that was. Whereas now, people blow up from all over. It can just be a random 40-year-old living in his mom's basement posting racist memes, and it can be seen with as much credibility as, if not more, than some less sensational but accurate piece of information that just doesn't go viral.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, even just look at, and I hate to even give them the free press, but Fox News alone, like, they literally have news in the title, yet are an entertainment company, or argue to be.
In court, they argued that.
Yeah.
And they won based off of that.
Yeah, exactly. But who would know that without looking into them a little bit more? And so it's just, things can look a little grim. I think that we're all feeling a little bit of that pressure societally right now, with inflation being so high, with elections kind of coming back around the corner. Like, I do think that people are starting to feel that pressure again, and so I think that it's good to open up the conversation. Yeah, and I don't think I don't want to give the opinion that we think that everyone is just going to, like, hold hands and sing Kumbaya. I think that no matter what, there are going to be different opinions when it comes to things, but I think that at the end of the day, what shouldn't be up for debate is each other's safety and well-being as just fellow humans. And I think that to question anyone's right to that is just wrong. And so, you know, give everyone a little bit of grace, but also stand up for those that you can stand up for when you can.
Yeah, I'm tired of hearing people like Ben Shapiro and stuff that I listen to be like, oh, we have a difference of opinion on this political issue, when the political issue is like a person's human rights, you know. It's like, that's not a political difference, brother. Yeah, anyways, this is kind of a long, meandering, unfocused podcast. We didn't, I'm glad we didn't, like I said, we didn't really plan this at all. I kind of just went into it, so forgive us for our lack of focus, but.
Okay, and now for some good news only. To start us off, Barbie has unveiled their very first ever doll with Down syndrome. This was a partnership with the National Down Syndrome Society, and it's a great step in helping represent children with disabilities. Next up, Texas lawmakers, surprisingly, have raised pollution fines for the first time in over a decade. So we will take those wins that we can get, guys. And then finally, the wood stork looks like it may be removed off of the endangered species list due to a large recovery in population.
Hell yeah. And that is going to be the end of episode 1. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time on America's Hot Gossip.